Okay. So again, good evening. I am Basavaraj. So I am taking up Geography General Studies. Here, this is the first session where I was taking. So before this, around 15 years of experience is there. So usually my classes are there in Delhi and other parts like Pune, Bangalore, here Hyderabad, in some other institutions as well there. Now this is a session on something about geography. I hope you might have completed all of your geography classes. GS has been done, I guess. Completely has done. And this is where you are taking up your test series, prelims as well as the mains test series. Now when we take a look of the exam and need of this in UPSC aspect, there is some differences are there between the state government and UPSC. UPSC is something which is yearly based, and you have to focus on current affairs which are seen in last 1.5 years. In the worst case, it will be 2 years of question papers are required or current affairs are required. Those you can find in the examination. And if you are preparing that with a strategy, then I don't think you will have any difficulty in writing any answers which are asked in UPSC. It is far more easy than your Group C examination. Only you have to have a strategy. Now, many students qualify in the first attempt. Why? Because they are having good strategy. It's not that they are having huge content of knowledge. Strategy is important in this. Strategy means rather than reading which should be left out. It's not about accumulating everything in your mind. It's not about filling everything in your mind. So that filling itself becomes a junk data. So you should be good enough in analyzing what is good and what is not required for the examination. Now if you take this examination, you might be knowing that in the prelims and mains, you will find certain variations are there. Now if you take up the prelims part, when you take up the prelims part, so what is expected in the prelims? Generally we say factual data. Factual data. So the first aspect is you should be good enough in the facts. Second one is you should be good enough in concepts. Concepts, clarity is important here. So you should be good enough in concepts. Then third one is once you are good in the concepts, then you can use them in your applications. How to make socio-economic development of that. Then it is application. Applications. Right. So facts you can get from current affairs, and you have to always depend on authenticated materials like PIBs, press information bureaus, or government data rather than something which is represented in some other. So you have to be very specific and selective from the data. So it has to be authenticated, government data. Then certain facts you will get from NCERT books. NCERT books. Now generally along with the facts, we talk about static portion. Static portion. So facts includes the data plus the static portion. The static portion. Now concepts. So the moment when we say concepts, in geography we come across many concepts like air masses, continental drift theory, plate tectonic theory, right? Soil formation, pedogenesis. So we have many concepts are there. You should be good enough in knowing the concepts, what that concept says, and how you can apply that in your day-to-day activities. Application is very important. So it is about understanding the concept, then you have to apply that in the perspectives of geography, where they will ask the questions based on that only. So it is not about in-depth understanding of plate tectonics. You should understand what this plate tectonics says. What is this continental drift theory? Now when we are reading continental drift theory and plate tectonic theory, in the continental drift theory he says that the continents are moving, and the reason what he says is the forces like the differential gravitational force, and he says that something called as centrifugal forces which is responsible for making the continents to move. See here you should understand that what he says is correct. What he says is correct. The continents are moving. But the mechanism what he says is not absolutely correct. The reason behind the movement is not correct. So when you are reading continental drift theory, you should understand that yes, what he says is correct. but the mechanism is not correct. That should be fixed in the mind. Now he has given certain evidences like zigzag arrangement of the coastal areas, or fossil evidences like Mesosaurus, Glossopteris, because he was more biologist rather than geographer. So he has taken those evidences, glacial deposits, tilites what we say, right? So he has taken those evidences, mountain building and all. So evidences what he is giving, are they wrong? They are correct. They are correct. But the mechanism which he used is not correct. And that has been explained by what we refer that as plate tectonic theory and seafloor spreading. Now what mechanism they have used? Process is same, but they say that it is not the forces, it is something called as convection currents. And these convection currents are responsible for making the movement of the lithosphere plates. Now this, once you fix in your mind, it becomes easy for you to understand what is continental drift theory, what is seafloor spreading, and what is plate tectonic theory. Here it is about something called as convection currents, the heat which is generated in the Earth's interior. Now what is the source of a heat? This is how you have to ask yourself. The source of a heat, Earth when it become the planet, so before that the heat which was accumulated. Then second source is what we say radioactivity. Third one is the sinking of denser elements in the Earth's interior, the core, that friction creates the heat. So this heat always tries to escape, which creates the convection currents. And these convection currents are responsible for the movements. It is something like this. When you are preparing curry, on the surface you will find some leaves are there, coriander leaves and all. So they all move because of the convection currents which are developed in the liquid. So the same mechanism you will find here. So once you know that concept, you can apply and it becomes crystal clear for you to write at any time. So you should know what concept, what are the issues, and how they have been developed over a period of a time. You have to make demarcation. You don't have to go in-depth analysis of that. You have to understand how you can apply that and what can be seen. Now when you are reading continental drift theory and you are reading plate tectonic theory, so these plate movements help us to understand why that fold mountain is in that area. Why volcanic activities are there in Andes? Why not they are in the Himalayas? Why only in Rockies and Andes? Why we don't have them in the Himalayas? Why we find an archipelago, group of islands scattered there? Why such dominance are there? So all these are explained by the theories. So hence you should have the overview of the theory and how it differs from each other. That is required in the context, right? So you should be very good enough in the concepts and also how they differ from each other. If they are on the same content. In geomorphology, you have the same continental drift theory, seafloor spreading, plate tectonic, all talks about the same thing. So we find variations in that. So same concept, 3 headings. So you have to understand what all these and how they differ from each other. Your work is done. That is what required in the context of your GS. It's not your optional studies, it is GS, Samanya Adhyayan, general behavior, general understanding, that is more than sufficient. If you make research, you will be losing your path. General, how it is linked and how we are locating that in that. So that's how you have to read the concepts. Clarity should be there. Not in depth, clarity. Now once you know that, then you can apply that, like why we find earthquakes in the Himalayan region. What type of earthquakes are there? Now when we are talking about that, why the tsunami was dangerous in the year 2004. We come across certain terms like mega thrusts, Indonesia, Sumatra, Sonda thrust. So there the earthquake is responsible for triggering huge displacement of water, which triggered the tsunami in these areas. So you should be knowing these, that why that area is vulnerable for earthquake, why that area is vulnerable for tsunami, why that is landslide. If you are reading about Himalayas, you will come across that. Landslides. When you are reading Himalayas, in the concepts you read that they are evolving slopes. It means that they are continuously growing. It means they are not stable. Then second, they are steeper in India. It means we refer that as hogback, steeper. Now steeper means, are they having stability? Steeper, no stability. Then that region is having more amount of earthquake. It will disturb the land. right? And Indian plate is grinding beneath the Eurasian plate. So it means landslides are vulnerable. So that should be kept in the mind when you are reading concept and application. What all happens when the plate grinds somewhere? It will trigger friction, it will trigger upliftment, which creates evolving slopes, hogbacks, steep slopes, and they are naturally responsible for the landslides in that areas. Now, when you make deforestation or overgrazing, you will remove the vegetation. Now, when the vegetation is removed, then don't you think that the vegetation which was holding the soil is not sufficient enough to hold that, and hence it will accelerate the landslide. So naturally Himalayas are vulnerable for landslides, but it is accelerated by man-made activities. We refer that as anthropogenic factors. So this should be kept in the mind. So when you are writing, you should remember that yes, they are naturally also, but naturally it is within limits. But when it is involved with human inventions, then it means that it is accelerated. It is accelerated. Its intensity increases, its frequency increases. So that should be kept in the mind. Whenever you are preparing any notes, anything on Himalayas and all, you should remember these things. So that's how you should be knowing the concepts and putting them into application parts. It may be air masses. When you are talking about air masses, now we come across certain air masses which are moving from ocean towards the land. We refer them as onshores. Onshores. When it is moving from ocean towards the land, it will carry moisture. And this, when it enters into the land area, we refer that as onshore winds. And onshore winds have moisture. And these winds can trigger rainfall when they collide with any barrier. Windward side, orographic. Now, if any air is moving from land to the ocean, we refer that as an offshore. Now, does it have any moisture? So, it will create dry conditions like what we see in the deserts, west sides of the continents, right? So, you should remember what are these air masses and how they can be applicable. Now, these concepts will help us to understand the parameters. Is it clear? So, you should be good enough in the facts, concepts, applications, and along with that, maps are very important. Maps are very important. Now, most of the times when you are reading your current affairs or statics, you should always locate them in your current affairs. Rather than just reading, you should locate them. For example, if you are reading about, say, Black Sea. Now, Black Sea is surrounded by which countries? If you are reading something about, say, Dead Sea. Now, Dead Sea is surrounded by which countries? Israel conflict. So, when we talk, you should remember exactly where is that Dead Sea. Now, when you are reading your current affairs, we come across, say, Lake, an example, Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca is in the news because it is drying up. Now, significance of that lake, where it is? It is in the Andes, and it is the highest navigable lake in the world. Now, because of the impact of climate change, it is reducing its water content. So, they will ask questions based on these things. Now, in the same way, we find Amazon forest fires are dominant. Now, something associated with that areas will be asked, like, say, Panthanal wetlands. So, where do you find the Panthanal wetlands, which are referred as the largest wetlands in the tropical regions surrounding countries? So, such questions can be asked in your geographical parts. They can be in your IR also. So, when you are reading your current affairs, you can make a mark of that and you can roughly create a map of yourself. So, when you are showing that, you should make something and you should create something. For example, if you are reading about, say, Dal Lake, and you come across something called as Dachingam Sanctuary, Dachingam National Park, and Hemis National Park. Now, when you are reading that, you will read and you will forget. But when you are making notes of that, if you put that in a simple way, Indian map, so here you can show this as a Kashmir, and in the Kashmir Union Territory, you will have Dachingam National Park. And in the Ladakh, you are having Hemis National Park. So here you can put them and you can see them pictographically. Now, when you are writing on Dachingam, it is a national park near Dal Lake, and it also has the species which are referred to as Hanguls or Kashmir stag, which are critically endangered species. So that will be there in your mind. Now, when you are writing on water bodies, lakes, which are in the news, so you come across many lakes, Wular Lake, So Morori Lake, right? Sokar lakes. So you will find these lakes in this area of Ladakh. Show them in the maps so that you can write perfectly about that. This is how you have to make your work easy. If you make your work easy, then it becomes significant for you to give 100% return in your studies. Is that clear? So this is what the requirement of the exams in the prelims. Now if you see the questions which were asked here, the questions which were asked previously, prelims 1. The soil in the tropical rainforest is rich in the nutrients. This is first statement. Then second statement is the high temperature and the moisture of the tropical rainforest causes dead organic matter in the soil to decompose quickly. Now here they are asking about the nutrients and fertility of the soil. It is associated with the pedogenesis, soil formation process. Soil formation process. Now very simple process when we say the soil formation includes parent rock, it includes climatic factors, it includes also certain natural impacts which are seen there. Now when you are reading that, you will always come across the role of temperature, role of precipitation. Now any area wherever we find more precipitation is there, the water moves downward. We refer that as leaching process. Leaching process, or we say translocation, where the nutrients are washed downward. Where the nutrients are washed downwards. Nutrients means you can say humus, which is organic component, right? They are washed down. And generally when we talk about the areas which are having heavy rainfalls, they will wash all the nutrients downwards. Then second thing is when you are reading about your soil formation, whenever in the summer season the food gets spoiled. Why? Because the bacteria will act on that and they will destroy the food. So to protect the food, we keep them in the refrigerator, reducing the temperature. So hence the bacterial activities are linked with the temperature. Higher the temperature, higher will be the bacterial activity. Now if more bacteria, then they will eat all amount of organic component. They will eat more amount of dead part. So it means that area will be having less amount of humus. High temperature, less humus. And high temperature, heavy rainfall. Heavy rainfall which will push the organic or dissolved salts downward. This is how the soil concept is seen. Now, the soil in the tropical rainforest is rich in the nutrients. It cannot be rich in the nutrients because their temperature is more. And as the temperature is more, bacterial activity will be high. So the tropical soils will not have humus. Will not have humus. Humus means organic part. Now, what is the role of humus? Humus is having a capacity of retaining the water, absorbing the water. More humus, more water absorption. And if any soil absorbs more water, then by default it will be having good amount of the moisture which can support the growth of the plants. Right. So here the nutrients will be washed downwards. They will be washed downward because of leaching process or translocation process, where we come across something called as elevation and elevation. In soil formation you will come across. Opposite of that is seen in the desert, which is called as capillary action, where the salts moves upward along with the water. So here they are pushed downward, here they are moving upward. That create calcification or salinization. This is how you have to make your references. So the tropical soils will not be rich in the nutrients. Then the high temperature and moisture of the tropical rainforest cause the dead organic matter in the soil to decompose quickly. That is what the bacterial activity. So the second statement is correct and the first statement is wrong here. Analysis. Analysis, it's not just about reading the terms. You should analyze them. And once it is analyzed, you don't have to revise also. You don't have to revise anything. It is perfectly, when it is fixed, it is fixed. If it is not fixed, you can't by heart that. That is the beauty of this subject. Once you know the content, once you know the components, then you don't have to by heart anything on that. You can read and make your assumption based on that. So hence in this case, this will be the wrong statement and this will be the correct statement. Application is seen. Now if we take up one more question. The longest border between the two continents in the world, which was asked last year only. Now this is based on the map. Based on the map. Now if you are reading thoroughly maps, then you can answer it very easily. Very easily. If you see the largest boundaries, you come across the 5 lakes of America, followed by that region. So USA and Canada. The 5 lakes, we come across that Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, right? Superior, and then the areas. So it is simple if you are reading the maps carefully. So it is such questions you will get here, which are map based questions. Sometimes they may ask the countries which are surrounding the Black Sea, Caspian Sea, which are in news. always these map based questions will be the places which are in the news. Now, 6 questions. Consider the following descriptions. Annual and daily range temperature is low. It means that there is less difference between the days and nights temperature. Annual, daily. Then it says that precipitation occurs throughout the year. It means all the year rainfall is there. Now precipitation varies between 50 centimeters to 250 centimeters. Now when you apply your basic common sense, heavy rainfall or rainfall throughout the year is seen near the equator or at the equator. Now at the equator, if you put, this statement will not be correct, because at the equator there is no area where you are having 50 centimeters. It should be more than 300 centimeters. So equator is not the appropriate point, because this should be very high. Those 2 statements may be correct, but this statement will not hold good. So you can leave that equatorial climate. Now, which are the areas where you are having such conditions and rainfalls are there? So those areas where we find the onshore winds are continuously hitting, and these onshore winds will give rainfall throughout the year. Now when we talk about onshore, now here they are having a catch. This is a continent and this is ocean. Now here you are having equator, right? This is tropical area. Now here when the wind is moving, it is moving in this direction, and we refer this as onshore winds. It brings heavy rainfall in the continent. Throughout the year, if this wind is blowing, throughout the year the continent will be having rainfall throughout the year. Now this is the eastern part of the continent. Now what will be this portion? Will it be east of an ocean? This portion. This is eastern part of a continent, and for ocean this portion will be western side, western part. Right. Now if you see the statements, annually and daily range of temperature is low, and these. And when you go with the options, equatorial climate, you can leave it. It won't be. Then China type, it will not be having such type of rainfall. China type, it's not possible to have that. Then only left out is that the regions which are onshores. Onshore means it has to be either in the eastern margins of the continents, or we can say it is western margins of the oceans. So that is how you have to apply the part. And once you apply that, then it becomes easy for you to make sure that the points are exactly up to the mark here. Is it clear? So that's how they ask about the questions. I'll ask him to put. किरण कहाँ गया? किरण सर को कनेक्शन ಅದು ಹೋದ್ರಲ್ಲ. Now these are very simple exams. You don't have to get much stress here. Only thing is you have to organize your preparation strategy. And once you know that, then I don't think you will have any difficulty in that. Conceptual parts you can get from NCERT and some applications. It's not reading often and often. If you read once throughout, and every day if you make a revision of 6 hours, that is more than sufficient. 1 year you should make a rigorous preparation, 1 year or 1.5 years, and then that is sufficient for you to crack the examination. You leave apart everything, organize your preparation, that is more than sufficient. You don't have to spend 3 years, 4 years for this examination. 1 year, 2 years, that is more than sufficient. It's about your optional and organizing the other parts. Is it clear? It's not that hectic. In Group C there is more competition. They will study, they will by heart, and they will mark. But here it is a bit easy. Once you are having a good thorough knowledge of that, that becomes easy. You should read, and when you completed that application level, and you should take test series somewhere where you are having onlines, offlines, wherever you are having, you take them as much as possible. Once the course is done, not before the course. Right. So once it is done, you should take up the test series as much as possible. I am not telling that you should take from one institute only. So it is something which is significant because you will have an assessment. What you have read, what you have studied will help you. So in that case, you should be good enough in that. And these test series are value addition only when you have completed your subject. Only when you have completed your subject. For example, you have completed your geography, ecology, environment and disaster management. So once you have completed all the three, then it becomes easy for you to take up the classes or take up the tests. So before completion of the subject, don't take the test. The problem here is before completion of, if you are taking the test, you will have deviations. The moment when you read the questions, you may find that they are very difficult, or sometimes you may find some questions are simple. So based on that, you can't make any conclusion. So always make sure that anything, any test you are taking, you should complete your subject and then you have to take in part. So I think all subjects you are completed. Geography, ecology, disaster management, optional also you are completed. So you have to work out in that. So any attempt you have made last year, this year? What were the mistakes you had? The same, right? Lack of revision. Then have you organized your preparation in the conceptual manners? You be serious. You be truthful to that. Missing was there, right? Missing was there. Now when you are missing, then it becomes a major problem. I'm not telling that you are not reading. You are preparing. But only thing is you need a path. So once you are having a path, once you are having that, then it becomes easy for you to reach to the destination. I'm not telling that you don't know. The moment if somebody explains, you will be knowing. But the significance is linkage. How you link that. And once you are good enough in linkage, then it becomes easy for you to crack any type of examination. So this UPSC exams talks about the same thing. The same thing. So whatever you did, you know that, but only thing is linkages. Now somebody, when it makes linkages, you feel more interesting, right? So this you could have done by yourself only, right? So when we say onshore and offshore, you know what are onshore, you know what are offshore. But when you're applying that, you should be good enough in knowing which is west part of ocean and which is east part of ocean. Then west part of continent and east part of continents. So once you are good enough in that flow, then you don't have any problem. I'll assure you that you will not have any problem in cracking UPSC. Nowadays, it is based on these parameters only. It's not about huge information what you are storing. It is not required. Not at all required. And NCERT books class 10th, 11th, 12th and 10th, if you are reading, they are very much sufficient. Now, have you completed your class 10th, 11th, 12th seriously? Seriously. Reading is different. Seriously, have you completed? Right. So if you take the Indian geography of class 10th, if you read the physiographic divisions of India, word by word if you read, huge data will enter into your mind. So leaving that, we depend on something else. That should not be done. So basics are required. So if you are reading your NCERT books, I'll assure you that good number of content will be there with you. So you read your NCERT books carefully, take 8th, 9th, 10th. And once you read them, then you will find that all the questions which are asked in UPSC are found in the NCERT. And they are very small books. They are very small books. The challenging part is understanding them and putting into the formats. And that's where the classes, when we have a discussions, so that will help you to understand what is onshore, what is offshore, and how it will help in the context of your making linkages. Right. So that's how you have to be very careful in these points. So we were discussing about that portion. Right. Now we were discussing about the same thing. Now when we talk about that, equatorial climate is ruled out. It can't be there. Now China type is also not there, because China type we will find gaps. So you don't find that. Then humid subtropical climate also will not be there. Subtropical, you don't have rain throughout the year. Then if you move on to marine west coast climate, marine means ocean, west side of the oceans in the tropical areas. Marine means ocean. So this is marine or ocean. This is west part of the marine, and this is continent and east part. Now this is an area where you have rainfalls. This is an area where you are having the rainfalls, which we refer them as onshore one. So hence, He is confused you with West Coast. He has confused you with the West Coast. So you should be good enough in marking them and making sure that, yes, to make it perfectly. Marine West Coast. The moment when West Coast is there, you will confuse. You have read about the deserts in the west coast of continents. Right, so you will get confused with that. So marine West Coast means it is in the eastern side of continent. So eastern side you are having heavy rainfalls like northeastern part of India, West Bengal. Eastern side you are having. Western side the rainfall decreases. So hence it is play of word. You should catch those words. Then it becomes easy for you to put them. Is it clear? So this is how your prelims is required. Basics, facts, concepts. Read your NCERT, at least start reading them carefully. Word by word if you read. If you make mind map of that, that will gain more confidence to you. Is it clear? Now in the same way we are having something called as mains. Mains. Now when we talk about the mains examination. Mains examination. Now mains examination is something which is club of all those. Club of all those. So here you should be good enough in application part. And this application part is good enough only when you are good in the concept. Concept. Now both application and concept you should link that with present trend. You should link that with present trend. Present trend. Now if you are reading regularly current affairs, we come across that global warming and climate change have been tremendously affecting the Earth's entire parameters. Every time we come across global warming, every time we come across climate change, it is increase in the greenhouse gas composition, which is affecting the global climate. Global climate. And if you are reading your current affairs regularly and all, you always come across that the reports which are given, like IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So many reports which are given. So IPCC and all, they have said that huge amount of atmospheric carbon dioxide is entering into ocean. So according to the data, if you take IPCC data, he has said that around 90% of the atmospheric carbon dioxide which has been produced from 1971 to 2020 has entered into oceans. So something is expected on that part. Ocean, global warming, climate change. And when this carbon dioxide enters into the ocean, it means that it increases the temperature of ocean. And it is not the entire depth of ocean. 100 to 200 meters of ocean, upper portion. And that upper portion we refer that as sea surface temperature, SST. Upper portion, it is not the depth. So this is responsible for increasing of the sea surface temperature. So these data which are given, they will help you to understand and think what type of questions. Now rainfall patterns have also changed. So based on that, questions can be framed. Wind patterns have also changed. All these changes which have been seen in geomorphology, climatology will be reflected in your mains. So you should be good enough in applications, one. Second, you should be good enough in diagrams. You should be good enough in diagrams. Now in geography, a single diagram is equivalent to 100 words. Now when you are not having much time, you can represent all your answers in diagram. Diagrams includes maps, flow charts. Diagrams includes map and flow charts. You can show them pictographically. You can show them with the flow charts. It is simple way of representation. Now when you are doing everything in diagrams, say maps and flow charts, it means that you are having more confidence. When you are confused, you will write everything in paragraphs. When you are showing in the diagrams, when you are showing in the flow chart, it means that you are very confident about your answers. So it means you are having more clarity. More clarity. Right? Then along with that, you will show one or two examples. You will show examples. So flow charts and examples are important here. Flow charts and examples are important in this case. So when you are preparing for your examination, you should always make sure that you are preparing it as an integrated approach. Not prelims, not main separately. You should keep integrated approach, combine all, and then it becomes easy for you to make the preparation. So hence, I suggest that you should go with integrated approach. You should go with integrated approach. Right. It is not delineating, it is not separating prelims from the mains. You read them carefully, chapter wise chapter, along with facts, you combine the concepts and make your mind maps. Mind maps means take any topic you are reading. Take an example, you are reading about northern plains. So what are there in the northern plains? Make a list of that. Make a list of that. Then it becomes easy for you to reconnect when you are reading your geography. If you are reading something on, say, for example, if you are reading about, say, demographic transition theory, what demographic transition theory says? What happens in the first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage? And now we have added the fifth stage. And this was asked in the examination, demographic winter. Demographic winter, where we talk about the birth rates are less and death rates are more, which leads to increasing of the old age population. Old age population. So once you are making the mind maps, it becomes easy for you to make your preparation bit easy, because the content will be filled your mind. Only thing is you have to have a direction and keywords. Now when you make mind maps, your keywords will not be missing. Keywords will not be missing. So many students don't make these mind maps. So that is where they miss their keywords. They miss their keywords. Now when you are making mind maps, make sure that you are fixing the data and everything in that part. That will help you to organize your preparation. Entire concept you can show in 1 or 2 diagrams. Right. For example, you are talking about land degradation. So you can explain what are the causes of land degradation in one chart. Right. So you are mentioning land degradation. Land degradation. So here you can show them very clearly. Right. It may be more amount of over irrigation. Right. It may be about fertilizers. It may be about salinization in that areas where the productivity decreases. Now sometimes when they say desertification, it's a bit more bigger than that. Land degradation and desertification. Now you should make a linkage. What is land degradation? Where the productivity of the land, the biological productivity of the land decreases. It can be any type of crops. It can be rice, it can be wheat, it can be coffee. If productivity decreases, we refer that as land degradation. Now when you are applying this land degradation in the arid areas, we refer that as desertification. So once it is in your mind, you can answer that very carefully. Now the reasons you can show in the mind maps: deforestation, overgrazing, right, unscientific methods of agriculture, shifting cultivation. All these will reduce the fertility of the soil, which in turn creates such types of events like soil erosion and all, which makes the soil not suitable. We refer that as desertification. Is that clear? So you have to make the mind maps in that. Then it becomes easy for you to go through. Right. Now if you see the questions which were asked, discuss the natural resource potential of Deccan Trap. Very straightforward. So the moment when you are writing on this question, you should understand what is Deccan Trap. Deccan Trap, when you say, you have to remember that it is a region in this area. You have to put this area. This is the Deccan Trap. Deccan Trap. Right. So now Deccan Trap is made up of basaltic lava. So when you are writing, you should remember it is made up of basaltic lava. Basaltic lava. Right. So it formed when the Indian plate collided with the African plate and the reunion hotspot erupted there. It is a result of the reunion hotspot. Reunion hotspot which erupted. Now you should remember what is hotspot. In geography you have heard about mental plumes, stationary plumes or stationary mantle area. So where in the Earth's interior, the magma which is stationary compared to other. So this stationary magma in the mantle region, when it is heated more, anything when it is heated, it loses its density, it raises up, we refer that as buoyancy. So this mantle, when it moves upward, we refer that as mantle plume. Now the surface expression of mantle plume. When this mantle plume reaches to the surface, we refer that as hotspot volcano. When this mantle plume reaches to the surface, we refer that as hotspot volcano. And this is what the reunion hotspot is. So the mantle plume reached to the surface, basalt, and that deposited in the western part of India, and that created the Deccan Plateau, Deccan Trap, layer by layer deposition. So you should give some idea, Deccan Trap. And this Deccan Trap is in Maharashtra, and part of that is in Gujarat also. So you are given its idea from where it is and its location. Its location. Right. Now this basalt, when it disintegrated, it created a soil, and that soils are black soils. Black soils. So this disintegration created black soil. Black soil. And these black soils are used for agriculture like cotton, sugar cane, vegetables. And always we know that plateaus are associated with rich mineral resources. So you should define that, what minerals are there. What type of minerals, and this is also suitable for settlements. What type of settlements are there? Right, and this is also the region associated with rivers. Rivers, water availability, rivers. So hence, when you are writing your any examination point of view, you should remember what type of the advantages are there. Now here he asks something called as natural resources. Now the moment when you are writing on natural resources, you should remember that resources are something which are providing economic benefit. It can be river, it can be soil, it can be mineral, anything which provides economic benefit, we refer that as natural resources. Now when you study that Deccan Trap, what are important resources are there, you can put them. That is the demand of the question. Right. Now second question, if you see, what are the forces that influences the ocean currents? Factors influencing ocean currents. Now when you are reading your geography, you will come across this factors. The first one is the factors which impact that. Factors. So the moment when you say factors, we come across something called as density of ocean water, temperature, salinity, which influences that. So here you have to talk on the factors like how the density is important, then how the temperature is important. Now because of the variation of temperature, we find the water in the ocean moves from equator to the tropics. Equator to the tropics. Then salinity. Now when you talk about salinity, how the salinity will make the movement of ocean water. Now because of salinity on the upper areas, the water from the Atlantic Ocean moves towards the Mediterranean Sea through the Strait of Gibraltar. Through the Strait of Gibraltar. Because oceans will be having less salinity than the partially enclosed water bodies like Mediterranean Sea. Now here it explains how the water moves from Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. So this is called as density and temperature, as well as something called as salinity. Then also winds will have an impact. Winds will also have an impact. Then apart from that, there are something called as modifying factors. Modifying factors means which changes their directions. Now modifying means if any ocean water, if it is moving to the coastal area, it will hit the coastal area and it will deflect. Deflect. So we refer that as modifying factors. So we have modifying factors also. Modifying factors also, like the coastal shape of the coastline, which makes the deflection. Then bottoms of an ocean, bottom relief, which also makes that. And then wind patterns like monsoon winds. In Indian Ocean, during June, July, August and September, the wind is moving towards India. That is towards Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. But in the October and November, that is northeast monsoon. It is also modifying. It is also modifying. So it is the winds which also modify. So that's why in the ocean currents of India, in the northern hemisphere, in June, July, August, that is September, the wind are totally different. It is influenced by southwest monsoon. But in the winter season, the same area is influenced by northeast monsoon. So in the June, July, August and September, all the water will move towards India, but in October and November they are moving back towards the equator. So these are referred as the modifying factors in the ocean currents. So you have mentioned what are ocean currents and what are modifying factors. Now next is discuss their role in fishing industry. Now fishing industries are found in the areas with parameters. When you are reading that, the first thing is it should have a widthier continental shelf. Widthier continental shelf. Now the moment when it is having widthier continental shelf, it means that that area will have shallow water. Continental shelf is gentle slope, so it will have shallow water. Now when it is having shallow water, sunlight will reach there, and this sunlight will help in the growth of small insects and small grasses, which we refer them as phytoplanktons and zooplanktons. So it will help in the growth of phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, and for this fish reaches to eat them, and hence it becomes the best fishing grounds if they are having continental shelf which is widthier. Along with that, in that area, if warm and cold ocean currents meet, then they become the best fishing grounds in the world. Take an example of Japan. In Japan, we find that warm Kuroshio current meets right. So in Japan, we find warm Kuroshio currents, and this warm Kuroshio meets Okostoke and Oyashio, which makes the best fishing grounds in the Japan. Then when you talk about Peru is best fishing ground because of upwelling of water. So wherever upwelling of water is there, it will bring the nutrients and the fish will attract to that, and that is where the Peru becomes the best fishing ground in the world. And if you take the other side, where you are having Gulf Stream, this Gulf Stream meets the Labrador current, and that creates the best fishing grounds there. Then you take the Brazil and Falkland current. So wherever Brazil current and Falkland current meets in the Brazil, so it becomes the best fishing grounds in the world. So hence it is very simple to write if you are knowing about the ocean currents and their applications. So what are ocean currents? What are factors? Modifying factors, and the reason for best fishing grounds. Continental shelf widthier, warm and cold ocean current meeting, one factor. Second one is upwelling. One is warm and cold, second one is upwelling. So wherever when you are reading, where upwellings are there, they are the best. Warm and cool, best. It completes, and it is for 15 marks. Is that clear? Now, what is sea surface temperature? The same thing. It is the temperature of the ocean, 100 to 200 meters. Now here when we say sea surface temperature, and how does it affect the formation of the tropical cyclones? Now it is based on the tropical cyclones. The moment when we say tropical cyclone, you should remember that tropical cyclones are thermal in origin. They are thermal in origin. Tropical cyclones are the cyclones which are developed in between these two tropical areas, and they need at least 27 degrees centigrades of the temperature, where the low pressure is created. Right. So low pressure, which makes the convergence of wind, and it lifts upward. And then near the equator, exactly at the equator, we don't have the cyclones because the Coriolis effect is zero at the equator. So you don't find any deflection. So exactly at the equator, you don't have the tropical cyclones. But near the equator, 5 degrees north and south, where the lifting air, it rotates because of the influence of the Coriolis effect, and hence it develops into cyclone. Now more the temperature, more latent energy, more amount of moisture, more amount of cyclones. This is what he is talking. Oceans are referred as carbon sink. And they are also referred as carbon sequesters. They sequester more amount of carbon dioxide. And sometimes you take a methodology to store also, like we talk about geological sequestration, where you absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store in the oceans. That is where artificial part. Now here they are absorbing also. So we find both types of the carbon dioxide is there. But here they are talking about the sea surface temperature, which has been increased due to large amount of the absorption since from 1970 to 2020. And that is where the sea surface temperatures have increased. In some cases, it is more than 2 degrees, and that is more than sufficient to trigger the formation of tropical cyclone, which adds more latent heat, and that latent heat triggers intensification of the cyclones. And the same thing has been asked. Now what is cloud bursting? as anticipated. Cloud bursting means heavy rainfall in the shorter period of a time in the smaller areas. Right, and if you read that, Indian Meteorological Department has defined cloud bursting as more than 100 millimeters of rainfall in lesser areas in 1 hour. We refer that as cloud bursting. And this is associated with orographic impact. Warm and cold air masses, when they collide near the mountains, due to initial momentum, they rise up, and they rise very strongly because of high instability. And this high instability makes them to create a strong vertical upliftment. And this strong upliftment is seen in the formation of something called as vertical clouds. And these vertical clouds are nothing but cumulonimbus clouds. And these cumulonimbus clouds always provide heavy rainfall accompanied by thunderstorm and lightnings. And this we have already experienced in India, like Uttarakhand episode, Kashmir episode, and also in 2023 in Sikkim, where the cloud bursting was seen in above the Lonak Lake, and that Lonak Lake was responsible for something called as GLOFs, glacial lake outbursting floods. If you are reading current affairs, you will come across that. A cloud bursting occurred above the Lonak Lake. It filled the Lonak Lake, and this Lonak Lake, which is a glacial lake, it flooded off, and when it breaks, we refer them as glacial lake outburst floods, which created flash floods in the lowland areas. So such types of events can be seen. So he is asking about the same. What is cloud bursting? The electrostatic forces which holds the water accumulate there, and then it does not leave. Maybe after some times when it is unable to hold that, it throws down. We refer that as cloud bursting. It is generally seen in orographic areas like Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, West Ghats, etc. Right. Now, what are aurora australis and aurora borealis? How are they triggered? This year it was asked. Now, to write this answer, it is for 15 marks. What is required for this? When you are reading, only you know that aurora aureolis and aurora australis are the flashlights, dazzling lights. Now, how to write it for 15 marks? So, when they ask the question, so the demand is for 15 marks. Right. So, you should be good enough in the concepts, then only you can write. Now, to write this, first thing is you will make a definition. What is aurora borealis and aurora australis? So, you will write a definition. Right. So, it is flash of the light or dazzling lights which are seen near the poles, in the Earth's ionosphere. So, when you are drawing the diagram, you should show this. So, this areas at the height, ionosphere we find. In the northern hemisphere, we refer them as borealis, and in the south, we refer them as australis. This is borealis, this is australis. Now, why the lights are there? It is because of the interaction of the sun's charged particles with the Earth's layer, which is also charged layer. Now, which is the Earth's charged layer? Ionosphere, which is there in the thermosphere. Troposphere, stratosphere, and thermosphere. When you talk tropo, strato, meso, thermosphere. In the thermosphere, we are having ionosphere and exosphere. Now, ionosphere is where we find the extreme ultraviolets, X-rays of the sun. They interact with the atoms and molecules, and then they convert these ions into charged particles, which are responsible for these charged particles in the ionosphere. Now, the sun's charged particles, which are also electromagnetic radiations, charged particles of the suns, when they interact with the Earth's ionosphere, the two live wires, when we meet, they will have the flash of light. This is what he has asked. So, it is an interaction. So, when you are mentioning that, you should mention it is an interaction of the sun's charged particles. Now, generally when you talk about charged particles, he is talking about high charged particles which are reaching towards the Earth. And this is seen in something called as coronal mass ejection, solar flares or coronal mass ejection, and which is interacting with the Earth's ionosphere. Now, why in the and what mechanism is it. Now to explain this, you have to write something on called as sunspot. You have to write something on sunspot. Right. Now when these sunspots break, they are like knot. When the knot snaps, when the knot breaks, these sunspots are intense magnetic flux. These sunspots are intense magnetic flux which are developed in the sun's photosphere. Now when this photosphere or when this sunspot breaks, it will release large amount of the energy, and this energy which is released by breaking up of the sunspots, we refer them as the coronal mass ejection. It is the release of large amount of these sunspots, breaking up of that, snapping of these sunspots. Now how these sunspots are produced? It is associated with the sun's magnetic field. Now sun has magnetic field, right? And this magnetic field is created because of the charged particles which are colliding and moving in the sun's part. Because when sun's temperature is very high, it is in the plasma state. So the collision and the movement of the charged particles create solar dynamo mechanism, and that dynamo mechanism creates the magnetic field around the sun. And this magnetic field in the sun, it reorganizes itself by changing its polarity. Now when it is changing its polarity, during that time the sunspots are created. And these sunspots which are created when the sun is changing its polarity, they increase in the numbers and decrease in the numbers. It is a cycle which we refer them as sunspot cycle. Now sometimes they increase maximum, we refer that as solar maximum, and sometimes they decrease, we refer them as sunspot minimum. Now when these takes place, when the maximum sunspots are there, it means that more amount of charged particles which we reaching. And when these sunspots break, they reach to the Earth's, and Earth also has strong magnetic field because of the outer core. Outer core is made up of liquid nephew or fluid nephew, which rotates and creates the Earth's magnetic field. Now Earth has a magnetic field. Right. Now these charged particles, when they collide with the Earth's magnetic field, we know that Earth's magnetic field protects us from charged particles, so it will deflect them. So these sunspots which have released that, these coronal mass ejections, so these coronal mass ejections will be deflected in both the sides. They will deflect them, and when they reach to the height where ionosphere is there, then they will show these dazzling lights, and we refer them as the aurora borealis and aurora australis. The point seems to be simple, but it is associated with the explanation of solar dynamo mechanism, sunspot cycle, which it aligns once in every 11 years, and Earth's magnetic field, and interaction of the charged particles with the Earth's magnetic field, deflecting them in the north and south, and that in turn creating the aurora borealis and aurora australis. That's how you have to make your datas. Is it clear? So hence it is reading and rewriting and understanding them with the conceptual parts. And generally in the classes we discuss the same parameters, how it is done and how they are linked with your present parameters. This is how UPSC takes the examination. Is it clear? Now here we are coming with the test papers. So already whatever the test papers and whatever series we are doing, it is same as on the lines with UPSC. So we have taken that from previous year's examination, collection of the question from that, and how the questions can be taken, and based on that we have made at par and something which is relevant for your UPSC, and that will help you in increasing your confidence. And here we will be having 3 sectional papers, 1, 2, 3 for prelims, and 3 sectional papers for the mains. And once you have good confidence in all the 3 sectional papers, then you will have a complete paper, which we refer them as the full length text here. So sectional wise, when we say, if you are reading prelims, right? So in the prelims, these topics will be covered, like evolution of solar system, theories associated, Big Bang theory, evidence to support Big Bang theory, right? Then stars. Then we come across something called as Chandrasekhar limit, how the star ends up its life. Then we come across certain terminologies there. Asteroids, what are these asteroids, right? Then again we come across Trojans, what are the Trojans? Terrestrial planets, what are their characteristics? So all these small points will be reflected in this when you're talking about evolution. Then geomorphology. Geomorphology means it talks about endogenetic forces, exogenetic forces, generally a geomorphic process. So geomorphic process means it talks about the two forces which are operating on the earth simultaneously, endogenetic forces and exogenetic forces. So both are responsible for changing the earth surface, and we refer that as geomorphic process. So thorough analysis is done. What is endogenetic, what is exogenetic, how they operate, what are earthquakes, what are volcanoes, and how the landforms changes, agents of denudation. So based on that, the questions will be, and you will get that detailed in your class 11th NCERT book, and the same will be discussed in the classes as well with more elaboration, right? Then mappings will be there, world mapping and Indian mapping. That will be your first paper. Now the same second test paper where they will be on climatology, weather phenomena, then oceanography, ocean currents, then biogeography, soil formation, characteristics of the soils. That will be the second. Then the third session will be where it talks about India and its drainage system. India and its drainage system, right? So 3 prelims MCQs will be there and 1 combined one. In the same way, you are having mains. So in the mains, in detailed discussion will be there. What type of the questions, and the questions which are framed will be keeping in the mind last year previous years or the 7 years data, and based on that the questions are framed. That will help you to make sure that all the regions are touched properly, right? So this is how the test series are there. 3 sectional and 1 will be complete full, and in the mains also you will find the same thing. And this will be completely based on your basics, current affairs, application, concepts. Everything will be mixed in this. Nothing will be left out. And all the questions, all the process will be detailed analysis can be done. So you will have a complete coverage of both prelims and main syllabus in those test series. And there will be a proper discussion. There will be a discussion, analysis of the discussion, how it is done, what are the issues you have to take. So there will be a proper discussion, right? Then of course mentorship is provided, and individually they will make an assessment, and the session will be given in the better way, that how to improve your preparation, how to improve your answer writing capacities. If any answer you are writing, some are good, some are worst, some are average. So we'll help you to understand that where you are missing and what points to be added. It is an one-to-one assessment, one-to-one mentoring, serious assessment, and every concern will be taken care in the test series. This is what the part is. So it is one-to-one, and evaluation is done with the best approach, very fast evaluation, and for every answer feedback will be given, where you are missing, what should be improved. So by that you can help in your other preparations as well. Everything will be taken care, whether the diagrams are sufficient, maps are sufficient, flow charts are sufficient, what are missing in that. So if you take some few questions, few aspects, then it becomes clear for you to make sure that where to fill the gaps, where you are having confidence, which area you are having the strength, right? And current affairs sessions, as you know, they are always be there with that, right? And along with that, yes, we can say that it is one-stop solution for all your UPSC, because we provide you both integrated approach. It is not only prelims, not only the mains, but when the prelims examination is there, more concern is given to the prelims. It is not that you are separating prelims from the mains. More concern will be given to the prelims. It's like crash courses we may have, so that will help you intensify revision in say 15 days or 20 days. Now once mains exams, we will help you in that part also, like how to make assessment in the context of your mains examination also, right? So this is something where it will help in gaining your confidence in the journey of your UPSC. Is that clear? So this is how the program runs. Whatever your queries are there, it will be reverted back individually, and if any concerns are there, they can also be taken with more priority. More serious concerns will be there, and whatever questions we frame, they will be at par, taking into consideration of the needs of UPSC. It is not that framed by something or some circumstances, framed by keeping in the mind the present needs of UPSC, and discussions plus supporting answers will also be given. Discussion will be there, and also you will be given the way in which it has to be done. Content will also be given. Is that clear? So I think we can conclude a session on this part. Thank you. Okay, no issues.